Welcome everyone to this side event organized by the European Commission in collaboration with the Office for Climate Education and the Climate Fresk around the question, how can education support the transition towards the climate neutral society? I'm Maximilian Eisenbart, your moderator for today. I'm a companion of the Education for Climate Coalition, about which we'll hear something later. And I have with me Stefan Hermans. Stefan?
Hi, good morning to you all, wherever you are located. For the European Commission, making Europe the first climate neutral continent is on the top of its priority list. And under the leadership of our President, Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission proposed its Green Deal as the way to make this happen. And that means that all policy areas will contribute, each in their own way, to make the transition. And that means that we cannot do it alone. It needs partnerships, commitment, and action. Education has a key role to play, and all actors involved in teaching and learning have their own responsibility. And that's why we are very excited today to have this panel, because it zooms in on the role of education in all its aspects, and with a range of organizations who are taking the lead and show the way forward. These solutions to climate change are not just technical. They require a profound transformation of our culture, of our behavior, and our lifestyle. A green Europe will need more and better knowledge about climate change and sustainability, new skills, and a different behavior. The European Education Area strategy addresses the green transition and puts it at the heart of its agenda. The European Commission put forward 3 activities here. How will we move ahead together in the EU? For that question, the Commission will provide common orientation and guidance to the education sector in the EU member states. And in Eurospeak, this will take the form of a proposal for a recommendation by the Council of Ministers. And with this, member states will undertake action to make the necessary adaptations. Secondly, what competences are needed to make the green transition? To answer this question, the Commission will present a multidisciplinary European competence framework for the development and assessment of knowledge, skills, and attitudes based on the best evidence available. However, such global transitions aren't managed top-down. They will only happen, and they can only succeed if it is understood as our common societal challenge, and that we work on it together. And this is exactly where the Education for Climate Coalition comes in. A mobilization initiative carried and co-owned by pupils, students, teachers, by social partners and the civil society. A new community of practitioners, of doers from all over Europe. An open platform which allows for community building, co-creation, and cooperation. Our Commissioner, Maria Gabriel, she usually describes the main aim of the Education for Climate Coalition with the words, to make a difference. To make a difference in your school, in your neighborhood, in the very region you live in, and to contribute actively to the green transition all societies will need to go through. The Education for Climate Coalition reaches out to pupils, students, and teachers who want to make a difference and who want to work together with other pupils, with other students, with other teachers all over Europe, people who think alike. The coalition is a community of doers. I say it again. So community where your ideas are at the very heart of the Education for Climate Coalition. And only your ideas, your commitment, and your wish to make a difference will make it as a success. So it's in your hands. So let's join forces, join the coalition, and join our work for a climate neutral, sustainable future. Back to you, Max.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. I think that really nicely sums up what the Education for Climate Coalition is about. But I also really like that you stress the part that we do it together, and we don't do it together only within our community, but we also reach out to our partners, which is why I'm very glad that today we have with us the Office for Climate Education and the Climate Fresk. We'll have 3 short panel discussions with each of these organizations. So since the schedule is quite tight, I would suggest we jump right into it. First, we have the Office for Climate Education. We have with us Lydie Lescamontier, a senior officer with the Office for Climate Education. We have Won Young Byun, a senior project officer with UNESCO, and we have Charlene McEwen, who is a teacher's trainer for Eco Schools UK. Lydie, please take the floor.
Thank you, Max. Thank you to all of you for being this morning with us. So my name is Lydie Lescamontier, and I'm Science Officer at the Office for Climate Education, which is an international NGO that was created in 2018 to enhance worldwide climate change education, especially in the classrooms. So we were created in the context of the Article 12 of the Paris Agreement that you are all aware of, as education is a major asset to tackle climate change. So our goal is to create educational resources as well as professional development sessions for teachers worldwide, and especially teachers working with students from 9 to 15 years old. To create these resources, we use as a base, as a foundation, the work by the IPCC and their summary for policymakers. It then allows teachers to work with an actual scientific information, data, but also a validated one. We then offer teachers on our website free resources translated into 4 different languages, developing different themes like ocean and cryosphere. At the moment, we are working on land use and climate change as well. So teachers can find summary for teachers based on the IPCC reports explaining the science behind it, lesson plans, projects, videos, multimedia animations. We have testimonies and games. We just finished working on an escape game on climate change. So every resource is validated by our committee made of pedagogical and scientific experts. They focus both on the content, but also on the methodology used, with resources always leading to action, developing students' critical thinking, allowing them developing projects in their classroom, but also in their community in general. In 2020, we became a UNESCO center and deployed a large project in Latin America to adapt our resources and our training sessions to local and different cultural contexts. We also work with partners in Asia, in Europe, and we collaborate at the moment with the French Ministry of Education on implementing climate change in the current high school curricula. So today, next slide, please. I wanted to mention in particular an initiative that we launched a few months ago before that COP that we called the Teachers COP. And the idea behind it is to give a voice to teachers and let them share the challenges they face when they want to work on climate change education. This work started a few months ago, and we organized 4 different brainstorming sessions in different regions of the world, so in Latin America, in Asia, in Europe. And we asked all the teachers to share the issues they're facing when they want to implement climate change education in the classroom, but also different propositions to improve their work. And resulted from these workshops a statement that we voted with hundreds of teachers the 30th of November, so right before the COP, highlighting different propositions that we organized through 4 different topics that you can see here. So the curricula, the professional development of teachers, the pedagogical resources available, and also the role of school in that climate change context. But I won't tell you more about it, as we are welcoming in this session Charlene McEwen, who has been involved in this work and will present the different outcomes. So thank you very much, and have a good session. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Lydie. Before we come to Charlene, who can certainly tell us a lot of interesting things about what happens really underground and in the classrooms, I first want to go to One from UNESCO. Of course, you're looking from a bit of a broader perspective on these kind of initiatives. What do you think about this Teachers Cup?
Yes, thanks, Max, and thanks, Lydie, for that presentation. I think that's a wonderful initiative involving teachers and really knowing where the gaps lie in terms of implementing climate change education. I think that's the very important step that we have to make sure is well done. And I think that connects also to some of the research work that we are doing here at UNESCO as well.
I think we also have a little presentation for
Yes,
One.
of course. So may I have the screen, please?
There are the slides.
So while the screen is coming up, I would like to mention that UNESCO, as the lead UN agency on education for sustainable development, is working on various issues, including climate change education, as part of its global framework called ESD for 2030. And today I'm very happy to speak a little bit with a focus on teachers and how the overall status of climate change education looks like from our recent studies. UNESCO's work is mainly to support member states in the action for climate empowerment, as well as providing guidance and encouraging practices on climate change education and bringing global advocacy. And in this regard, in the latest discussion around the COP26, we had organized an education session with ministers of environment and education coming together on 5th of November. And around that event, we have published the recent findings on the status of climate education. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes. Yeah, the one before. Thank you. So this report I would like to share today is Getting Every School Climate Ready. And we've reviewed, for example, this is a compilation, a short brochure of compilation of 5 different studies that UNESCO is conducting around climate change education. And the figure on the screen as shows that in the review of national curriculum frameworks of 100 countries, about 47%, nearly half of these countries' documents reviewed did not have any reference to climate change education. And where they appear, more climate change education references were shown in the countries that are vulnerable to climate change, as opposed to those that are largely responsible for greenhouse gas emissions. So we can see the gaps in the overall climate change education policies across the world, and the need for us to put climate education and education for sustainable development at the heart of education policies. Next slide, please. And in particular, in the findings, we could see one of the other research that we are conducting with Education International is a survey of around 60,000 teachers from 144 countries across the world on their views on climate change education. And 95%, nearly all of these teachers responded that they believe that climate change education is so very important. But in the question of are the teachers ready to teach climate change, fewer than 40% were confident in teaching it, and about 1/3 felt that they are able to explain climate change in the regional or local context. So this is very much related and a very important point, because at the end of the day, we have to explain and we have to understand what is happening around us in our own environment in order to be able to take action upon it. And about 40% of teachers were confident in teaching cognitive dimension of climate change, explaining what climate change and greenhouse gas emissions mean, but only about 20% could explain well on how to take action. So we can see here clearly where the gaps lie in terms of teacher preparedness to address climate change education. And we can see how much more work needs to be done. So I look forward to, of course, Charlene's intervention on her experiences as teacher and teaching on the ground. But obviously, across the world, I think these gaps and these issues are shared widely. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, and we look forward to continued collaboration on this topic. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Juan. I think this really shows that indeed there are large gaps. Charlene, I cannot imagine that at your school there is not mention of climate change in the curriculum. So maybe you want to share a little bit how you are addressing this topic.
Yeah, so if we can just go back to the slide, perfect. So yeah, my name is Charlene McKeown. So I'm the Environmental Education Manager at Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful, and I manage eco schools there. I did teach for 12 years and very much was witness to the issues that were there. So very much what one has sort of mentioned there is really what came across in the run up to the Teachers' COP, that it wasn't on the curriculum, that there are massive gaps there, and unless a program like the Eco Schools program is facilitated, there was no real option. But very much the lack of confidence that you mentioned has came across in our meetings. So I suppose what I want to get across to you today is what our teachers have asked for on the back of Teachers' COP. So you can see here on the screen, this was kind of the conversation that we had on the day across the different countries. And then we met on the 30th, as Liddy said, to actually vote on these and see if teachers were in agreement on them. And the response was overwhelming that they were in agreement. So across the 4 areas, I'm going to quickly just read out to you, I suppose, what our teachers have asked for on that. So if I look at the curricula and school programs in general, so the implementation of climate change in school curriculum must be thoroughly rethought due to the overload of work caused already by loaded programs. This teaching cannot be added only as an additional subject to an already existing program. So the teachers voted and the following was agreed. So 1.1, a much greater consideration of climate change in the curriculum can be imagined in 2 different ways, either by creating strong links between the subjects taught and climate change, or by completely rewriting the programs by handing over this teaching to the heart of the program and the curriculum itself. 1.2, that it be taken into account in the programs, the transversal and multidisciplinary aspect of climate change. 1.3, a theoretical teaching approach, but also, and above all, practical, through the development of projects, working time on active pedagogies and disciplines more connected with reality. 1.4, greater collaboration between education and environment ministries to work on curriculum reform. And 1.5, programs designed to be inspiring for future generations. So that was voted on around curriculum. I'm going to move on to professional development. So the professional development of teachers is very much linked to the reflection around the role of the teacher within the school. The desire to provide a quality education should be a driving force in fostering professional development and career advancement, because school is not just a place where children are welcomed, but above all, a place where they learn about life. So likewise, in rethinking teacher training, it is necessary to take into account both the content of the programs for greater consistency, but also to ensure that free time is allocated to this training. And that was very much an issue that many of the teachers brought up. So it was voted and agreed upon that 2.1, to use the time now dedicated to teaching to offer lengthy training courses for teachers already in place. The approach must be multidisciplinary and must be encouraged by support from both trainers, experts, and scientists. 2.2, include climate change as early as initial teacher training, because in the first cycles, a large majority of teachers come from non-scientific literary fields, and that leads into the lack of confidence. 2.3, a consideration during training and pedagogical approaches and the management of emotions in students. They should also give teachers the opportunities to express their own feelings about climate change and offer tools to manage them. 2.4, to make these trainings places a connection between teachers, but also with experts, civil society actors, local NGOs, etc. 2.5, to rethink the training moments for teachers during school hours. These times can then be transformed into projects or concrete activities, followed by the students in connection with the climate change. The next section then was resources. I'm going to try and get through these as quickly. So as mentioned earlier, it is essential to think of resources and professional development as a whole. These training times must also be dedicated to the presentation of resources that can be used directly in the classroom. The increasingly developed digital format is not always the best suited to the needs of teachers, and the paper medium should be favoured in preparation for that. So it was voted and agreed that 3.1, to have easy and centralised access to educational resources validated by scientific and educational experts, co-constructed with teachers and tested in the classroom. 3.2, to facilitate lists of reference persons for teachers who can support them both for their professional development, but also during their projects. 3.3, resources based on local realities and therefore adapted to the different contexts of the students. 3.4, practical resources to address essential themes such as eco-anxiety, as well as materials for assessing local realities such as the carbon footprint and the ecological impact in general. 3.5, the establishment of platforms for the exchange of good practices, existing resources, examples of the implementation of projects in the classroom. The last area we looked at was the role of the school in the climate context. So the reality is students spend more than half of their time in school. So it's therefore urgent to revalue the school and its proper role in society. And the role of education must be more valued and promoted around this. So teachers voted and the following was agreed. 4.1, make schools an inspiring place representing the path to be followed by society on good practices in the fight against climate change. The reflection must be done both on the education of the students, but also in the functioning of the school itself. 4.2, the creation of a strong link between the schools, students, parents of those students, and local actors, political or not, to allow schools to be taken into account in local decisions. And 4.3, make school a place where students can change their behaviour and encourage thinking about solutions. The school must be inspiring, reassure the students, and allow them to project themselves into the future. So these were all voted on, but the response was overwhelming. I give an example of what we have done in Northern Ireland. So it isn't in our curriculum. It's a massive issue. There's a huge gap, as one mentioned there. So I found a loophole. I approached a local examining award body, the Open College Network in Northern Ireland, and I have created what we call a general certificate in secondary education, because our education systems here are so grade driven and exam focused, and unless something has a grade attached to it, it was very hard for schools to see the value in us doing anything around it. So I have found a back door in and a loophole, and we're just in the process. It has just been such affirmed that teachers can now pick this up and go and deliver it, but we're also, the government are supporting us in delivering the teacher training to support teachers, because that lack of confidence is a real issue. We recently surveyed our teachers, and I think it was 94% said that they didn't have the confidence, and they felt that they weren't able to actually even speak on it in general, just in a classroom, never mind actually teach about it. So there's a huge gap there on the role we want schools to play, and actually how we're going to support them in playing that role. So I hope I've covered as much as I can for you guys.
I think there was indeed a lot of information, especially at the beginning. Can people also find this this list you agreed upon with the teachers online?
Yes, it's on the Office for Climate Education's site, and they can actually sign up to agree to it. So we're still taking signatures of people who are in support of it at the moment.
Okay,
if Lydia wants to jump in on that, maybe say exactly where it is on her website. It's not my site.
Lydia might know, but I also found I heard an interesting thing you mentioned is that teachers want more collaboration between teachers and the Ministry of Education. Lydia, you mentioned in the beginning that you were doing just that in France at the moment. Maybe you want to share some details on how you are doing that at the moment.
Yeah, actually, we were commissioned to produce some resources for high school. And it works pretty well, but I think it's a first step, because what we're doing today is to create resources for the students specialized in science. And the idea behind that statement and what we're doing at the OCE is to provide education on climate change for everyone, and especially at lower level, and not depending on the specialty you start when you are already 17 years old. So I think it's a first collaboration that is working very well, but we can't stop there. We have to go further, and especially changing the curricula from primary school.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I also hear that we have a question from the audience. So there's a Slido available where you can post questions to the speakers if you have any. So please make use of that. The question is, how do you engage academy trusts to adapt a curriculum which encourages environmental sustainability when they tend to be economically or business inclined? I'm not sure who of you wants to answer that. Maybe one can say a few words about that. Is there any of the speakers here that want to address this question? Otherwise, I see that we're also a bit pressed for time. So I would thank the three of you very much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. And then we move on to the second panel, which is with the Climate Fresk. I can introduce to you Aline Dekit, who is Education Kickoff Coordinator, if I remember her title correctly. We have Cedric Ringenbach, who is the founder of Climate Fresk, and we have François-Marie Bréant, who is a scientist connected to the Climate Fresk. Aline, maybe as a first question to you, I heard that yesterday, so the Climate Fresk, as a small introduction, you can of course tell a lot more than me about it, is a serious game around climate change. And I heard you did a workshop at the COP yesterday with around 500 participants, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just gonna present first Climate Fresk, and after I tell you about climate education kickoff we ran yesterday at Strathclyde University. So Climate Fresk is a serious game. You told about this. This is actually a card game based on IPCC reports. So this is the best available science on climate change we can find. It's on the latest report, so the AR6. What we ask people, it's a collaborative work, and we ask a group of six to eight people to order those cards from cause to effects with the help of a facilitator. This helped them make the link by themselves and learn by themselves without having a top-down lecture. So this helped them remember better and learn at a collective moment. So what does it look like? So this is a 3-hour workshop. First, they learn about climate change for 1.5 hours. And after, they talk about emotion, about feeling, about how they feel about this. And then we have a collective moment with a debate about how they can act, how they can take actions collectively, individually, inside the university, outside the university. We can run this in companies also with a specific debriefing about how they can maybe take actions in their field, especially. So we run this in universities or in schools for everyone. Just we have a kid game, we have a game also for high schools or for universities. And this helps people take actions, like concrete actions in the university after, because what we do is we train facilitators after the workshop, because we offer them to become themselves climate education leaders after the event. What I organize in university is climate education kickoffs, what is like one of the masterpieces of the Climate Fresk NGO. It's like having an event in which lots of people play the Climate Fresk at the same time, and we train facilitators internally in the university so that people feel empowered and become themselves like the relay of climate awareness. What we do, for example, in Strathclyde University yesterday, we had like 200 people at the same time playing Climate Fresk, and it was like students and staff facilitating this workshop for students and staff, and that enables creating bonds in the university. Everybody learns at the same time about climate change. They learned how to take actions inside the university, and the feedback we had in the end was people students and staff wanted to become facilitators. More than half of them decided to become facilitators just right after this, and they decided to make a group so that they can facilitate by themselves after this event, so that the Strathclyde University is not autonomous and can run these events many times without even the help of the NGO. Just talking about the NGO, so the Climate Fresk is the NGO created 3 years ago in order to facilitate those workshops everywhere in the world. It's an international NGO. It's now a community of 10,000 facilitators, and like we run workshops just everywhere because it's like we have a strong community of facilitators organizing those workshops spontaneously in schools, in companies, in universities, in cities, for citizens, for everyone. And this helps people feel empowered. This helps people feeling better, because when you hear about this, you feel sometimes powerless. And this is why taking actions and become a climate education leader is like one of the key, so that we spread awareness and people can feel empowered and become actors. Thank you for your attention.
That sounds amazing. Already 100,000 facilitators worldwide. That is a great achievement. Cedric, you of course founded Climate Fresk as a serious game specifically to really bring this emotion and this action on the topic of climate change into the schools. How does it feel also seeing that there's such a snowball effect now, with almost half of the participants becoming a facilitator after playing it? How do you feel about that?
I am myself impressed with the spreading of the Climate Fresk. It's really quick. I knew well 3.5 years ago I knew that it would be big. I announced that we would reach 1 million people playing the game, but I didn't know if it would take 3 or 10 years. It's a question of exponential. So now we know that we double our figures every 6 months. And so we will have reached this first million player within the next year, 2022. Maybe the reason why it's spreading so quick, I see several reasons. One is that the workshop works very well. It means, that the people are active when we play it. It's a collaborative tool. People will talk, disagree, argue, make mistakes, break themselves, and that is very, very powerful on a pedagogical point of view. And then at the end, the trainers, the facilitators are really trained to cope with the feelings of the people and to give a space for people to express what they feel. And and I think that's a key point for the success of this workshop. And then. It could be depressing to learn about climate change, but the way we do it, it seems that people really leave the workshop with the will to be active, to take action. And one of the actions that we propose is to become themselves moderators, because there is a need to explain climate change everywhere. Why? Because if everybody says, okay, I understood now, I need to act, and then you start to involve yourself in changing the world, then you may forget that everybody around you still haven't understood what it's about. So there is a very big need to explain everybody where we stand. The level of knowledge about climate is very low. I mean, in many documents, you see photos with plastic pollutions when it talks about climate change. Can you imagine the gap between the real thing about climate and the reality of people talking about sorting their waste and dealing with plastic pollution? I think people even think that plastic pollution is responsible for climate change. There is really a big gap. So we want to tackle this gap, and I think our community is now convinced that that it's important to do that. And I would like especially to emphasize the point that it's not only about youth. Here we talk about climate education, so of course we especially talk about schools, about kids, but the goal of the Climate Fresk is larger than that. We play the game also very much in companies, and it works very well in companies too. And we need that. We need to reach especially the top level of the companies. The members of the board of directors in big companies, they have to know about climate change, and the game works with them. It works the same. I mean, it's the same. They become kids. In fact, they become like kids. They will play the game, make the drawings like everybody, and it works very well. And at the end, they realize that they thought they knew about climate change, but they didn't know it was so serious. And so I have maybe a call to Stefan Herman. If you want, we could work together with the European Commission about how to spread the knowledge about climate change even more largely, but through companies and through institutions also. The game is really easy to handle. Anybody can take it, being trained as a moderator, and spread in any organization. And we are here to help for that. So if you wish, if you think some of your colleagues may need to have a bit more of knowledge on climate, then we'd be happy to help to spread even larger with you.
Well, Stefan, I think that's a very interesting proposition you got here. We, of course, also have François-Marie Briand, who's a scientist who I know deals a lot with communicating science to the public. And maybe as Cedric just mentioned, Climate Fresk is not only a good tool for students, but also for companies and institutions. Is there a difference when communicating science to these two groups, or why is a game such a good vehicle to do it to both groups?
Well, indeed, there is it's very important when you communicate climate change to adapt what you say to the public, and I see that each time I do my conferences. Obviously, you don't use the same words and you don't use the same concept when you are talking to children, when you are talking to the lay people, or when you are talking to other scientists that are not in climate science. And but let me go back a little bit about this IPCC report and the talking to the public. I really think that it's important to remind that the first step for the communication to the public is indeed this IPCC report. And I think that the climate science community has done really a great job with those IPCC reports. And I do not know of any other science community that has done the same kind of work of synthesis of what the science says on a given subject. So there is this report. The first IPCC report is really big, and it's used a language that is not designed for the common people. But then this is why there is also the summary for the policymakers, which actually aims into that direction. I mean, we aim to have a language that is accessible to most people, but still it's not far enough. I mean, when many people tell me that even the summary for policymakers that was written so that the general public can read it actually is too complicated and use words that are not accessible to most people. And this is why really the work of NGOs like the Climate Fresk, but also of others and also of teachers is really needed, so that you can translate really the IPCC report, the summary for the policymaker, to a language that is really for everyone. And then my position, as you said a few minutes ago, I like to communicate to the public. I like to do that directly. I do many conferences, but also I like to be involved in organizations like NGOs. Not so much, I'm not part of the Climate Fresk, but I'm here to make sure that the messages that are given by the Climate Fresk are indeed compatible with IPCC report. And I must say that they do that really, really well.
Well, Cedric, that must be a great compliment from such a scientist.
It is.
Yeah, do you want to react?
Well, thanks, François-Marie, for this comment. And I have to admit that it's not easy to be at the same time easy to understand and compatible with science. I had to make very strong decisions about the content. Like, for instance, I rounded some figures, which means that they are false. I've rounded them because I prefer people to remember the figures than giving the precise figures. I had to simplify the definition of radiative forcing because otherwise people won't understand it. They will understand about roughly what is necessary to understand it, but the real definition, we give it to the moderators. So in case they meet somebody who is very knowledgeable, they will be able to say, yeah, I know the rule definition is a bit more complicated than that. But you see, it's very subtle to find the good limit between precision and popularization. And accuracy, yeah, and also pedagogy.
Indeed, and this is and the level of simplification depends on your audience, depends on who you are talking to, and this goes back to the question that was asked to us, and really, I mean, you have to make sure that the message you are giving is compatible with really what's going on, and it's okay to simplify. Really, it's okay as long as you do not give wrong messages.
Perfect. Thanks a lot to the three of you. I would really love to be able to play the climate fresque one day myself, and maybe even become a facilitator. I think Stefan, you have a very interesting offer to make the whole European Commission climate fresque facilitators. So I think we'll certainly work on that. And then now we go to our last panel of the day, which is about the Education for Climate Coalition, of which I'm of course myself also a participant or a companion, as we call them now. And I'm very lucky that I have with me two of my fellow companions, Amélie Schobesberger, high school student from Brussels, Vasilis Karamanouaz from Greece. He is a scientist and an education developer at a school. And we have Biljana Sirakova from the European Commission. She's the youth coordinator, so she's also a strong supporter of our coalition. So the coalition, in two sentences, really aims to establish a European community that works on the topic of climate education by bringing together students, teachers, and education stakeholders. And for this, we developed a platform which we'll launch on the 25th, later about that more, of this month. And on this platform, the students and teachers can get in contact with each other on questions they might have, on ideas they might have, and they can collaborate with each other and together develop these tools that we talked about so far today, that are needed also for translating the science into the classroom, making the teaching in the classroom effective, and also so students really feel and understand what it's about. Of course, also without losing this balance between accuracy and understandability we just talked about. So maybe just dive right into it. Of course, we've been on this journey already together for quite a while, but Amélie, based on your experience as a pupil of the secondary school in Belgium, involved in a climate change project called the Climate Academy, how does the Education for Climate community facilitate your work, and why is it important to you?
Thank you, Max. Well, I hope you can hear me well. I think what needs to be addressed to answer this question is the baffling lack of education that high school students and even university students have on this topic. That's such a big part of our life, and will be a part of our life, especially as students currently. And thinking that the current students that will be our future presidents, our future prime ministers, and other big decision makers don't have an understanding of this crisis, of the numbers, and of what it needs to solve it past a primary school level is impossible to even fathom at this point. It's a bit like having engineers building planes only knowing basic maths. It doesn't really make sense. And students want to know, students are interested, and once you talk about them, I've seen it in the Climate Academy, as we learn about the numbers, about what's really going on a deeper, more scientific and systemic level, people are interested and people want to know, but they don't like to only get surface level information, because that's not interesting enough to grasp people's attention to an extent that they want to do real change and to work for it. And so I think that's the issue, and that's why this initiative and this coalition is so important, because I've been a participant of it in a few meetings, on a few panels, and I've seen how students from all over the world and teachers can work together and especially students feel appreciated and feel heard. And as a student myself, I remember the feeling that gave me, because often we might not be dismissed, but our opinion or our feelings about a certain issue is not regarded at the same level as that of a teacher or a professor, which on some level is understandable, but as it affects us and our education, it's extremely important that we be heard and we feel comfortable sharing our experiences, because that's how we can cultivate the best environment and the best knowledge and share it. And I think that's what the coalition is all about, and what it will allow, and this platform will allow people to not only share their experiences and their best practices, but also ask the right questions and communicate what is needed. And that's the only way that we can build the systemic approach to this issue that we need to transition to a climate neutral society. And I think that's the beauty of this coalition.
Thanks a lot. I couldn't have said it better. Vasilis, we know you as a very big supporter of youth also. Do you maybe want to react also? What does the Climate Coalition mean to your work with the pupils as an education stakeholder? We can't hear you, Vasilis.
Okay, so it seems that my microphone is
not.
Okay, perfect. So a strong will to transform education is currently gaining momentum, and the Education for Climate Coalition can definitely be a valuable tool for accelerating this transformation and advancing sustainability and climate education. The coalition provides a collaborative environment that resonates also with our own school systemic approach, namely viewing the school as a hub where students and teachers interact with parents, local communities and policymakers, scientists and entrepreneurs in an interdisciplinary way and within a relationship of mutual learning and knowledge and data sharing. Furthermore, it reinforces the transformative learning experience with the objective to shape the leaders, innovators, and global citizens of tomorrow. And we're looking forward to enhancing the active engagement of our students in the transition towards a climate neutral society through the coalition's participatory and hands-on challenges, and through an interconnected and co-creative process with other fellow European students and education and civil stakeholders. And finally, but not least, it provides a platform through which our teachers can be heard, think, and create outside the box and showcase their climate-related work in a broader audience. But at the same time, they become trainees, upskill and reskill, learn and relate through the climate projects and initiatives of others, even outside their own field of expertise, and inspire change towards sustainable and regenerative futures. This is why the Education for Climate Coalition is an important initiative for us, and we invite everyone to join, be part of the climate solution, and make a difference. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vasilis. So, Biljana, as youth coordinator of the European Commission, your role is to strengthen the intersectoral cooperation within the European Commission on issues affecting the youth. And of course, education is a very big part of that. So from your perspective, also taking into account what Amelie and Vasilis have just highlighted about the coalition, how is the Climate Coalition relevant for your work as a youth coordinator of the European Commission?
Well, thank you for this question, Max. It's an honor to be here with you. Like you said, I'm a strong supporter of the Education for Climate Coalition. I believe it is a very important initiative. It demonstrates the power of community to make a difference. Stefan referred to this in the opening of this session today. The power of a community to make positive changes to a society. But I will mention just highlight three reasons why I think this initiative is important from my perspective as EU Youth Coordinator and in relation to youth policy. So the first is that I think this coalition helps promote an active citizenship mindset in young people. It engages students to connect with others, to voice their concerns, give opinions, to take an active role and to really take the future in their hands, which is, by the way, the slogan of the ongoing Conference for the Future of Europe. So for me, this coalition promotes a mindset and nurtures a mindset of active citizenship. Secondly, the initiative, I think, promotes the notion that young people should be involved in decision making, in policy making, especially in decisions that affect their future. And it's something that Emily referred to. I think we should have this understanding that they have original ideas and they can help with solutions to our biggest challenges, such as climate change. So we, I think, all policymakers, teachers, society have a lot to lose if we do not listen and consider these ideas and solutions they can come up with. And thirdly, I think this project contributes to the first of the 11 youth goals, which is to connect the European Union with young people. And so it is important for us, all of us who work in the European Union, to make a difference for young people, because we have so many opportunities for them. So it is important that we raise awareness, and so many more people, young people across Europe from different backgrounds, especially those who have fewer opportunities, are aware of all these options for them. I can mention, for instance, our programs for mobility, Erasmus+, also the European Solidarity Corps program, the initiative Discover EU, but also other initiatives such as the On the Green Track campaign, or indeed the Learning Corner of the Commission, which also hosts a lot of education for climate resources for teachers and for young people. So this coalition gives us a platform also to share some of these other opportunities to the benefit of young people. Finally, I would like to mention that I hope many of you know, the European Commission is proposing to make 2022 European Year of Youth. And I think this will give us momentum to advance further education for climate, this coalition, and young people's role in it. So we look forward working also with this community, the Education for Climate Coalition. We are happy to hear the ideas. This process has already started, and on the European Youth Portal, we have launched a short survey where I invite you to take a look and complete the survey. And through next year, I hope we have many opportunities to cooperate further. Thank you very much for inviting me today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks a lot, Biljana. Maybe to go back to Amelie for a second, because you of course just mentioned that next year is the European Year of Youth. And Amelie, I think we're on a right path with this coalition, and I think also there's a lot of local initiatives that are really promising. The Climate Academy of Mr. Pai, you're enrolled in yourself, is I think a really good example as well. But what is it you as a young person would really like to see in this next year of youth?
Well, I think the main thing, as I've already mentioned and as Biljana did as well, is that students need to have a space to actually voice the concerns they have and voice the knowledge, maybe the experiences they've made with the initiatives that have taken place or that are taking place, so that those can improve and be exported even further. Because I think those are the main two issues, are continuously improving the quality of the material and of whatever conversations there are, or more like on the ground, hands-on initiatives. But also the second thing that I'd like to see addressed even further is the reach of things, because obviously it's nice to have panels like this, and it's a huge first step. Definitely also being involved myself is a huge honor and is a big step, I think, but it's also having more people have access to information, to panels like these, to discussions, to be able to spread not only our thoughts and opinions, but also hear from policymakers, from people involved directly on the ground on a higher level, what's being done and how we can help.
Thanks a lot, Amelie. I think the session is coming to an end, but maybe to come back to with whom we started, Stefan. You heard a lot. You've got a very interesting proposition from Cedric today. Do you maybe want to react a little on what you heard today?
Thank you, Max, and thank you to each and every one of you has been contributing to this panel. This is about COP26, but I think here we're actually demonstrating the commitment that you see the willingness for action, and not just in words and talking about it, but actually really doing and bringing a number of projects together. I think that's really great to hear. And I think we heard the word being depressed earlier today. I think this is actually a reason to be very optimistic about this willingness that we see. We are in it for the long term. We're actually all in it for the rest of our life. So it's a lifetime issue that we are addressing. And as much as we know that certain things do take time, it is also not just important to start, but also the speed at which we develop in order to engage in projects and address those matters. And I think for that, it's really great to hear the commitment that we have had here. I think it is also very useful that we have heard about identification of gaps that exist, but not just to state that they are there, but also to start filling in those gaps. And I think one of those, for instance, for teachers and teacher training, I mean, and this is also clearly an area where we, as the European Commission, in partnership with the member states, with the education authorities, we actually can also bring a contribution to that and actually also advance this. But also, I think in a number of other domains that we have been hearing today, in which gaps are being identified, that we also are able to find responses to that. Take, for instance, the question on the education systems. This is exactly what a council recommendation, as bureaucratic as it may sound like, is actually all about. It is about setting and giving an orientation, providing the guidance, and based on evidence, including of what we have been hearing here today, that actually bring this forward. But also, I think the big issue around the competences, the skills to be developed, because also this will be very important, not just for our professional life, but also activities that we undertake as volunteers, but also very much in our personal life. So also these skills components, those competences that come with it, which is the competence framework that I was mentioning. And then I think very importantly also here, it's particularly on that coalition, because here it is where we can see that the ideas coming from all sorts of society, from the educational sphere, informal learning, formal learning, that they actually all can actively contribute to that. I think there's a limit to what one can do top down. I think what is very important here as well is that we allow not only plants to be and seeds to be planted, but also that we continue to water them and let them grow. And I think this is really what the coalition is all about, and really tap into the creativity and into the commitment that we have within our communities. And also not just for the school, but how a school reaches out to a local environment, how a school reaches out also to a business community around it. So also from this, that there is quite something to be gained. I've certainly heard the invitation of Cedric. I think we'll first, we'll try to give it a go at when we meet in the team. I think that will be a good way of testing and having some fun with it. But I think it's always a very welcome proposition that is being made, because I think it is by learning about it, by being active about it, that we actually can make this difference. So from my side, Max, if I may, I just would like to invite all of you, but also your friends, your acquaintances, to join us on the 25th of November, when we do have this Climate Coalition Day. And it's very much geared towards practice, practitioners, doers. So that's clearly what it is all about. And secondly, I just want to echo what Biljana has been saying, because 2022, the European Year of Youth, and obviously there will be a very strong climate dimension. And we also hope that also from this perspective, what we are engaging here in today will also come to much more fruition in the coming year in very concrete outputs that are being delivered. So on that, I want to say from our side, from the department here on education, but also youth, culture and sports, but also jointly here with our colleagues from the Joint Research Center, who are our allies, if I may say so, on putting the Climate Coalition up and providing you with all the tools necessary to engage on that. A very warm words of thanks for having joined us here but also for staying with us on the road that we will continue to travel together. Thanks, Max.
Thanks a lot, Stefan, for these closing words. I think we have 1 minute left, so I would maybe just take the time to thank all of you of the panelists who were here with me today. Very, very interesting to hear your stories, to hear about your work. I think it's really, really valuable what you're doing. And thanks for everyone that was listening. You can, if you're a teacher and you're listening and you think this Teachers Cup, I should have been there, I'm sure you can find some more information on the website of the Office for Climate Education. If you want to play the Climate Fresque, I've heard it's really, really a nice game to play. So if you have an idea or a group you want to play it with, just Google Climate Fresque. I'm sure they will happily provide you with some information about it. And I want to thank also my fellow Education for Climate companions. And if you want to become an Education for Climate companion as well, join us on the 25th of November. Thanks, everyone.